Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode 14, and if you're startled and wondering if this is a duplicate of what happened on Monday, no, it is not. This is episode 14 coming at you in the middle of the week. We got something special lined up for you today, and once again, thank you for listening and downloading another episode of the podcast. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. And then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this is your first episode or if you've been listening since episode 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. Yes, we have something special for today. You're not going to hear my opinions, my ideas, my approach, my ideas, or you want to say my takes on sports right now. This is all about my dad. It may have been about a week ago. I asked my dad if he would be willing to come on the podcast and be a guest, and I caught him. I asked him. He said, "Sure." Now he seemed kind of startled because it wasn't an everyday occurrence that I asked him to come on the podcast. So when he got that, when he understood and got grasped what was going on and what I was saying, he said, "Sure, I'll do it." And so I texted him a couple of days before we recorded. We did record this on Sunday, August the 4th. The weekend, a couple of days after the weekend of the mass shooting in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. Just to let you know that when the recording of this took place, he'll talk about that first, and then start talking, and then we'll go right from the mass shooting, and then right into sports. Without further ado, I'm not going to talk at all very much today. Let's take a trip to Indianapolis, Indiana, to have a conversation with my dad, a former coach, former teacher, former athlete, a current pastor of the Word of Faith Christian Church. Let's have a talk with my dad, Julius Stevens. What up, Dad? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jay. Glad to be here.
All right. First off, let's get right into it. What did you think about when you found out about the podcast?
I was excited for you because I know how much you love sports. I know how much you love watching sports, and you're very knowledgeable about sports. So I was excited to see what you had to say, your opinions about what's going on in the world of sports.
Oh, thanks. I like that. I like hearing nice things about what's going on. First off, not to get to sports first, but this is being recorded on Sunday. There was a couple mass shootings, I think it was Friday and Saturday as well. We live in Indianapolis. We don't live too far from mass shootings, acts of violence. You being a pastor, being involved with Stop the Violence Ministries here in the city. I used to get my hair cut in an area where people will say it was a bad area where you don't want to go. There are numerous areas in Indianapolis and in Indiana that are known for the crime, the hate, the shootings, things like that, where drugs are going all around. Someone that is in the community that people look to for help in time of need. How do you view shootings, acts of violence like this, and how do you think we as a country, as a community, could come together to potentially stop shootings like this taking place?
Well, I think it goes back to how you value life, how you value your life, how you value someone else's life. Obviously that these young men who are involved in these mass shootings don't have a much value, obviously, on the people's lives that they're killing, but I don't think they value their own lives. I think that their own lives are suffering and they're in a lot of pain. And one thing about people that are hurting, they go out to hurt people. Now you ask, what can we do? I think that first of all, we can come up with a system where we can acknowledge the old see something, say something is still a good way for us to be aware of people like that. Social media, when you see people, not that we're going to always make these people guilty, but at least be aware of people who get out on social media, put out a lot of hate speech. That's a sign. Is not necessarily that they would go out and shoot somebody, but again, we just have to be aware. I think as children and young and small, we must put some self-worth and value into them, so that as they grow up, they'll learn to value not just their lives, but the value of others.
Do you think it starts from the home life, where it's the mother and father, or maybe the cause, and maybe the things weren't started properly when they were children? It could have been a broken home or things like that. Or do you think it's more a product of their community, where they're just running around with the wrong people, and that's all they know because their friends, as early as they were, their friends started going one way, and instead of saying no, they went with their friends and started going down the wrong path?
Sure. I think everything starts at the home. Your parents are your first teachers. Your parents are your examples, they model. And again, I'm not saying that all these young men who are out there doing this violence came from bad homes. That's not necessarily the case. It's just decisions that they made as they got older that took them down that path. But I think a majority of it does start in the home. The old African adage that says that it takes a village to raise a child. It takes all of us. It takes, obviously, the primary caregivers are in the home. Then we go out into the community where we take a responsibility, whether at schools or church or wherever these young people go. And when we see them going down the wrong path, and even those kids who've made the decisions to go the wrong path, they need mentors, they need big brothers, they need people who can step in when they have absentee fathers. All of those things, this is a battle that's going to have to be fought on a whole lot of fronts if we're going to win.
All right. You go back to your high school days. Those were many moons ago, as one of my teachers used to say. You were the starting point guard for Elmhurst. Was it 2 years, junior and senior year?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I know that you had some stories from that. Not trying to embarrass you now. Not sure if I've heard this story or not. But if you were to go back in your high school days, who was the person or the team that gave you say the business the best, where you were playing back and forth, and all of a sudden you knew as soon as the tip off, as soon as they got the ball in their hand that first time, you couldn't do anything with them?
That would probably be Eugene Parker. I graduated from Fort Wayne Elmhurst in 1974. Eugene Parker was the leading scorer in the city. Eugene Parker went on to play for Purdue University. I think he was drafted by San Antonio, but he chose to go get his law degree, and he was one of the most successful football representatives in the country. He had some elite athletes like Rod Woodson, Deion Sanders, Emmitt Smith. They were all his clients. Unfortunately, Eugene passed away about 3 years ago. But in high school, he was you knew he was going to get 35 points when the game started. It just depends on who he wanted to embarrass along the way. And unfortunately, I was one of the ones that he embarrassed along the way.
Piggybacking off of that, saying one of the best ones that was there in the city at that time back in Fort Wayne, you and I have gone to quite a few high school games together. Seeing guys like Chris Wilkes, who went on to UCLA, Kyle Godwin, Mr. Basketball, went on to Virginia. We've seen lots and lots of athletes throughout my high school career, and even after that. And then even going back when I was in school, you got Greg Oden, you got Mike Conley, Eric Gordon. Even when I was gone, Gary Harris came in and ran the city. How do you think today's players, high school, college, NBA, compared to what it was when you were growing up, and saying, are they better? Are they worse? Are they the same? Is there a divide? How do you view today's basketball players versus back in the day?
They're better. There's no question that they're better because everybody is building off the next generation. Everybody is taking their cues from the previous generation. They're perfecting the skills that they had, but then adding to. And that's the way it should be. That's the way things evolve. You expect them to be better. Kids today, they train better. Eat better, some of them, not all of them, but they eat better, they understand the game better, much better shooters. I mean, we didn't have the three-point shot when I was in high school, and now you see middle school kids who can hit the three-point shot. So I think they're better athletes as far as their basketball IQ. I think every generation, I don't think you have anybody from any generation that understands their game any better than anyone else. But as far as running faster, jumping higher, each generation does that better.
Do you think the AAU format or the program has aided in the development of these players that we are watching now?
I think, yes, that it has, although I think it's put an undue burden on a lot of kids in that everybody can't afford the travel. They can't afford the hotel rooms. They can't afford to get the sponsors. And so what you end up doing is that you see a lot of elite teams and then the mediocre get left behind. But even like when you were leaving high school, anybody, I shouldn't use the word anybody, but a lot of kids can play college basketball at NAIA level, D3, D2. They don't all have to be D1 or in the power conferences. And so a lot of times AAU is just is for those D1 athletes, and the D2, D3 athletes kind of get pushed behind.
Yeah.
But a college degree from a D3 school is just as valuable as you get from a Big Ten school.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't get to talk to you about this before. You may have seen it in the paper, but there was a guy named, I think his name's Jalen Ivey. Jalen Ivey's going to Mishawaka Marion, or was going to. Took the same route as Keon Brooks did the previous year. Keon Brooks played at Fort Wayne North Side, ended up transferring to La Lemire up in the Northwest Indiana area. Jaden Ivey, same thing. I don't know what the situation was at his school. We got more inside scoop at Fort Wayne. We got family up there. But Jaden Ivey decided to go from Mishawaka Marion, potential Mr. Basketball candidate, just like Keon Brooks was, to go to La Lemire his senior year. And we had talked about going to the Hall of Fame Classic in Newcastle. Mishawaka Marion, which is a program, a one-day event where you have to apply, your school has to apply to play there, and they're looking not just for a good team, looking for a star. They want a star to go there. Newcastle, the biggest high school gym in the country. And I was thinking about that, and we had talked about that numerous times, but I'm thinking about Jaden Ivey, not Chris Wilkes, excuse me, he said at North Central, but Keon Brooks, they both potential Mr. Basketball candidates in a year where you probably have 5 or 6 guys that could be Mr. Basketball. It's not like there's one guy that's going to be the front runner the whole time. And to go from a school where you've been with your boys the whole time, you've been playing with the same guys, sometimes since you were a little kid, to go from your school to go play to a prep school where you're forsaking not just your senior year with your boys, with your teammates, that you could possibly go to a state title. You're also forsaking the chance to win Mr. Basketball. And you and I discussed this, where Mr. Basketball holds weight to a lot of fans, doesn't hold the same weight with a lot of players. And I just, in my mind, thinking about what he could be losing. Now, granted, he's going to get everyday training focused around basketball, focused around the sport that he loves. He's not going to be having to there's class, but it's not the class aspect where it's like your homework and all this stuff. They still do that, but you're getting more basketball centered training. And I think that's great. But if you're going to be forsaking your senior year potential Mr. Basketball, potential Indiana All-Star, where you can name, I could go down a list of guys that have been maybe they weren't Indiana Mr. Basketball, but they were Indiana All-Stars. They were ready to wear that jersey, go up against Kentucky and just beat them. I mean, it was more of a pride thing for the state. And I kind of agree with you. The same thing. AAU ball's kind of changed the aspect of the landscape of the mindset of players, but also I think that's translated into our state, our city, where these guys are really, really good, but they're not. They think, oh, I need to go somewhere else to stay, and they're forsaking, like, well, I'm going to another place, a prep school, more basketball center training, but the ability to be Mr. Basketball, the ability to be Indiana All-Star, it's not the same that it used to be. Why do you think that kids nowadays don't cherish the ability? And I've heard Kyle Guy say that he wanted to be Mr. Basketball, wanted to be an All-Star. He saw weight. He saw that being a very prestigious award. Why do you think kids nowadays in our state don't value that like they used to? Because I've heard stories, guys back in the day, they lived for that moment.
Sure. And again, this is the outside looking in, and this is just an opinion because I have no idea what goes into making that decision. The parents, the players, and the advisors, and all the people that go into making that decision for a high school senior to leave his high school and then go and play at a prep school. Just from the outside looking in, my question would be, how much better is that particular player going to be at the end of his prep school season as opposed to being at the end of his high school season? Is he going to be that much better? Because granted, he's probably going to play against much better competition because everybody that he's playing against at the prep school level is probably D1, a ball player, as opposed to a high school schedule where you might have a D1 ball player on every other team. And I get that. But that kid will be probably playing all summer against D1. But as a former school teacher, public school teacher, I think there's something valuable about your senior year. I'm just not talking basketball. I'm talking the prom. I'm talking about all the other senior activities that you have with students that you've gone through, maybe middle school with, high school together, and to give all of that up for one season of basketball where you think that, I don't know what the goal is. I think a lot of these players going into their senior year, it's already solidified where they rank as far as college is concerned. So it's not like you're in the top 100 and going in your senior year and going by prep school. Where are you going to go after that?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I think that you give up the senior year, the graduations, like I said, the prom, all the senior activities. And then when you talk basketball, to be on the Indiana All-Star team is an honor. And then to be Mr. Basketball of Indiana, that's something you'll remember far beyond your basketball years, and people will remember far beyond your basketball years. And to me, looking back, I can't. To me, when those athletes get in their 50s, they will. I can't imagine them saying, "Man, I wish I'd played at my high school my senior year."
Yeah. You were. I know you coached track back in Fort Wayne. Did you coach any other sports? It slipped my memory now.
Yeah, I coached 1 year of 9th grade basketball at Elmhurst High School. I was also a football coach, a middle school football coach, and a middle school track coach.
Okay. You've talked about numerous times some of the track athletes, probably because you guys won different championships. But you talked about how they remember you down the road, say, Mr. Stevens, look at this, look at that, families, things like that. Take some time to talk about one of your, I'm not trying to say single one out, that somebody may listen to this, but talk about maybe a few of your favorite, let's stick with track athletes that you had back in the day.
Wow, you're talking in the 80s and 90s. So here we are in 2019. So you know that's quite a while ago. A lot of these students are in their 40s now, and I remember Talia Barwick. I remember she was an outstanding runner, did well in high school. Kim Lubyhusen. A lot of these girls ran for Northrop High School, and they won state several times. And they had run for me in middle school. Tanya and Sonia Shepard, who are identical twins, they were also on Northrop's track team that Coach Blanks coached them at Northrop High School. So they were some outstanding runner. I'm trying to think of some boys. I coached boys track also, but the girls were the ones that really excelled in high school at Northrop, where they won several state championships. So I remember those girls.
Okay. You also were privileged to have a couple boys that played sports. I think the first sport that I ended up playing was soccer. Remember, you had us playing soccer, baseball, basketball. I didn't start playing football till 7th grade because I remember that I missed soccer sign-ups that year. So I was like, let's go ahead and play football at Belzer. Had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea how to put my pads into my pants. But you being a sports dad, having one of your sons, my brother, playing football above the collegiate level, what are some things you remember most about being a sports dad, sitting in the stands, or sometimes you had the camcorder out recording games? What are some things you remember as being a sports dad?
Well, I know what sports do for young men in the maturation of young men, understanding what it's like to be on a team, understanding what it's like for other people to depend on your talents to help to contribute toward the success of the team. I know that that's what you all were learning. Also making friends and understanding how a coach will give you a plan and say, let's go out and do that plan, and just to enjoy it while you enjoy it. I know you guys played a lot of soccer, and then once you decide to play football, I think you had a lot of success, especially at the middle school level, and also a lot at the high school level. And so it's nothing like a father to be up in the stands and see his sons, perform out on the field, watching you play basketball. And even as you're an adult, I mean, sometimes you were with groups and you'd go down to Bankers Life Fieldhouse.
Yeah,
you weren't playing with the Pacers, but you were playing after the Pacers. But you played on the floor after the Pacers had played late at night around 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But, you know, just to see you out there and to cheer you on, I've always enjoyed that.
If you were, if we see LeBron being able to watch his boys play AAU ball, being very, very on the forefront. His personality, it's just not a knock on him. He likes to have the attention on him. There are some individuals that have that. And sometimes during warm-ups, he does take the chance to have a little dunk contest, you may want to say. If you had the ability, not trying to knock you, but if you had the ability and your boys played basketball and at the on a different level, like an AAU travel ball where dads could come out and join the layup line, would you take the liberty to do that if you had that chance?
Probably not. I mean, the last thing a guy like LeBron needs is more attention. I mean, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's on commercials. He's on billboards. He's on magazines. He's everywhere. And for me, it would be a time to let my children shine.
Okay.
And to shine, I would go back into the shadows.
Okay.
And just let them shine. There's really no need for me to be out there. But that's just me. I'm not knocking LeBron for doing it. If that's what he wanted to do and his kids don't have a problem with it, they may be proud of their dad and say, look, my dad is LeBron James. Of course, I don't think anybody in the building wouldn't know that. but you know, it's a layup line. It's not that big a deal to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think more professional athletes, sticking with the sports dads, and I'm not knocking the ones that don't because I know they want to keep their lives private. They're in the forefront all the time. But do you think more sports dads should take the approach that LeBron does? Not the whole layup line or going over the top when one of his teammates, son's teammates, makes a great play. But do you think more dads should take the approach to put things on social media of them being in their kids' lives because of how a lot of dads have made a bad reputation of not being in their kids' lives?
I think that would be good if that was the point. The point is that I'm in my child's life, not to put someone down, but to inspire and encourage. We know, especially in the African American community, we have a lot of absentee dads and fathers who are not involved with their sons' lives, and fathers who just aren't there.
Right.
If you go to your uncle, my brother, who used to be involved with a lot of kids sports, one of the things that he would say, especially again in our community, is that when you go to the games, there's nothing there but moms.
Yeah.
The dads aren't at the baseball games. The dads aren't at the basketball games. That it's just a bunch of moms and the dad's not there. So if there's any way like a professional athlete can show to the community that, hey, I'm a dad and I'm involved with my child's sport, because just because you're not in the home with the child, which I would love to see all dads living with the kids' parents married, that's not the reality that we deal with. But that doesn't mean that you can't be involved with your son's in your son's life, because that's going to be very important to his development in the long term.
Yes, it will. Yes, it certainly will. Let's go to the professional ranks now. I'm not talking about being a dad or even things that we're going in high school and how that relates to life or the wars that these kids could have. Colts and Patriots. Mm-hmm. I think that was probably second to Pacers and Knicks. But the longest tenured rivalry that I have had in my life was Colts and Patriots. Even, I think it was 99, 2000, somewhere around that time when Tom Brady began to be the quarterback of the Patriots. Remember, every Sunday afternoon that they were on, it was on our TV. It didn't matter if it was 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, or a late game, that was on the TV. And 9 times out of 10, at least early on in those battles, we went to sleep or we ended the game upset, maybe turned it off a little early. What do you think? What do you remember from that rivalry back in the day?
What I remember, the Patriots kicking our butt. That's what I remember. I remember us being on the losing end more often than not. Even the year we won it in 2006. And Tom Brady had the ball for the final drive, and we intercepted the ball. It was like, oh, thank goodness. Because it's like, man, if Brady has the ball with 2 minutes to go, I don't care if he's in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Hold your breath.
Yeah.
Hold your breath.
He's still the same way.
He's gonna drive that ball down the field from the parking lot. And so, it's good. The couple of years later when I know this takes away from the rivalry that we're talking about, but a couple of years later when Jim Caldwell's the coach, and we have a chance to go undefeated. And remember, we went to that New York Jets game where they took Peyton Manning out and the starters out the second half, and they just threw the game away. And we ended up going to we ended up going to the Super Bowl, but it seemed like some of the wind was taken out of our sail when we just threw the game. And even though we got to the Super Bowl, New Orleans beat us on what they kick at the beginning of the second half. They kicked an onside kick. They beat us, but it just seemed like something went out of that team, because it was like they believed they could have gone undefeated that season, and the coaches took it away from them.
Yeah.
So,
I think that Colts, that run Peyton Manning had from 99, 2000, when they constructed that team of Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, Edgerrin James, who I believe will soon be in the Hall of Fame, will not be getting passed up anymore. Then you go to the defensive side of the ball. I didn't even talk about the offensive line, the tight ends, but you go to the defensive side of the ball. You got Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney, Gary Brackett at the time, Cato Jr. at the time, Bob Sanders, one of the best safeties at the time. If he didn't have his injuries, he was on track to have a Hall of Fame career. What I'm thinking about this, the Colts at that time, not to go against the Patriots, but how great of a run they had. What memories do you have just about that team? Not only going to the Patriots, but just about that team in general.
Fun. It was fun to be an Indianapolis coach. Fun to be living in Indianapolis. You know that you was a fan of one of the elite teams in the NFL, and to be just a part of it as a fan, to occasionally get to go to the games, you knew that in every game you had a chance to win. That even though the competition was good, you knew that your team was good. You knew your quarterback was good. You knew your offense was good. You knew your defense was good. and it's just fun being a fan. It's fun winning.
Yeah,
it's just
sure
fun winning.
Yeah, I know on Twitter a lot of times Reggie Wayne, and sometimes he connects that to his Instagram account. But on Twitter a lot of times Reggie Wayne will post pictures of his playing days, and I have subconsciously in my mind it's probably due to the Colts not being anywhere close to what they were back in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But I will hashtag glory days. I'm on almost all of his pictures when he's talking about his playing days or one of his teammates and how the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the togetherness, almost like a family type atmosphere and feel they had back then. Do you think that the Colts, currently constructed or be constructed a little bit further down the road, do you think that as Colts fans we'll be able to see what we saw during that Peyton Manning run?
I certainly hope so. I think on paper that this team is being constructed to be just as good. I think Luck, again, barring any injuries, I think he has the potential to rise to the same level of a Peyton Manning. I think, what's that linebacker's name?
Darius Leonard.
I just think that through the draft and through trades and picking up guys who were free agents, I just think that they are really constructed a good team on paper. We just have to see it play out on the field. And I think that this could be a breakout year. Okay. And I even think that, Brady's getting older. And like the old saying go, Father Time is undefeated.
He's knocking right now.
Yeah. And so, we've seen Serena get beat. Venus is getting beat. Tiger is on the decline. And you think Tom Brady's day is coming. I don't wish I'm not saying this, that he has any injuries. I'm just saying skill and that ability to take over a game in the end. Of course, they've lost Gronk. And when you start losing pieces like that, they're hard to replace.
Yeah, definitely. Staying with the professional level, Pacers fans. Like I said, my entire life, I was born in Indiana, so maybe subconsciously, you being a big basketball fan, we went to Pacers games. Moved to Indianapolis in '94. And Pacers games, Market Square Arena, Bankers Life Field, Conseco Fieldhouse, then Bankers Life Fieldhouse changed the name. 2010, 2011, LeBron goes to Miami. We have Paul George at the time. We have Danny Granger. George Hill came to the team for Kawhi Leonard. Still don't like that happened to our team. Yeah. But you have those players. You got Lance Stevenson off the bench, who began to be a more vocal part of the team. Frank Vogel, a young coach, coming in, taking over for Jim O'Brien. What do you remember from that Pacers and Heat rivalry going back and forth?
It's like we were always there, but we couldn't get over the hump.
Yeah.
It's like, some games we're just a minute away from defeating the Cavs, and I don't want to use the term bad teams, but I will say this: the good teams find a way to win.
Yes, they do.
And I'm not going to say that the Pacers were a bad team and they found a way to lose, but it just seems like it's kind of like, remember the year that Reggie Miller had a breakaway and Tayshaun
yep.
got him from behind.
Yeah.
All Reggie had to do was dunk the ball. But he leisurely went in, and he's just going to lay it up. And Tayshaun Prince came out of nowhere, and Detroit took us out of the playoffs. And we were right there.
Yeah.
It was like, if he made that, we're good to go. And so, that's just kind of sums up what the Pacers have been. They've almost been there, but never got there, except the one year with Larry Bird, where they went to the finals, and L.A. had a guy named Shaq and Kobe. And you know how that turned out.
Yeah. I think we all do. You were talking about Reggie Miller when he got that shot blocked. Oftentimes when I'm thinking about that play, there was a play, maybe I think it was a couple years earlier. It was Pacers Nets in the playoffs. You may not remember this, but I've seen the clip over and over. Reggie Miller was at the top, the three-point line. I think he pump fakes, and he drives down the middle of the lane. There's two defenders at the rim. Both go up to defend him. And Reggie Miller's not your he's a toothpick. I'm not gonna try to say anything. Mm-hmm. He's a very, very skinny guy. Mm-hmm. Even now, I think he's 50 years old now. Mm-hmm. His frame is still the same. He is known for mountain biking and bike riding. Mm-hmm. So he's not the biggest guy, but he went off, took off, jumped 2 feet, dunked the ball with 2 hands in traffic. So at that time, and I'm replaying this in my mind over and over and over, and I'm thinking, Reggie, why did you want to go to a layup at this time? But you had just dunked the ball previously. I mean, you're not a dunker, but as a fan, I'm thinking, just do what you've done before. Yeah. Go up strong. They teach kids at a young age. Yeah. Go up strong because there was a guy bigger than you trying to block your shot. I just always remember that time. Funny you bring that up when he got that shot blocked. Yeah. Pistons fans still try to throw that back in our face that Reggie Miller got a shot blocked by Tayshaun Prince. Yeah. The Pacers Heat rivalry once again. I remember I was in Florida. Had just graduated from college. We were in, I think it was Orlando on vacation, and we were watching one of the games in the hotel. Lance Stevenson was on the end of the bench, wasn't a focal point of the team at all, and he had come into the game. I think it was late in the game, just trying to get some good players out to rest and things like that. He came in. Joel Anthony, I believe, was the player on the Heat. Lance was he was starting to be a pest at that time. He ended up getting clothesline, getting hit, just because his personality was just trying to get under someone's skin. Transferred to a few years later where Lance Stevenson was a spark plug. A radio host, Michael Grady, started using the term the Lance effect. We even saw when Lance didn't re-sign a contract, Larry Bird said, I don't want to pay you that money. He went to Charlotte. His career, we thought, fell off. Came back to the team, and then first game back, I was at the game. You would think that Lance was an all-star. That Lance was the guy that everybody looked to score late in the game. Lance was not that guy. Very inconsistent. Right. He had his super highs, and his lows were almost lower than his highs were. What do you remember from the Lance effect with Lance Stevenson being a spark plug for the team?
I think that the Lance effect wasn't necessarily his play. As much as his attitude that he brought. He brought that bulldog fight attitude that you want somebody on that team that could be that guy. Yeah. And I don't think the Pacers had anybody that well. And I think Paul George, when they started winning and he said, what's happened? He just said, Lance Stevenson, he brought that energy. He brought that I'm going to be a pest. I'm going to irritate you. I'm going to tick you off, and you'd rather have him on your team than ticking off your other team because again, he took a lot of teams out of the game mentally. Yeah, I think the famous blow in the ear was one that he's trying to get into your head mentally. Even though his like you said, his basketball playing has always been inconsistent. Yeah.
I remember a lot of people relate Lance to a Dennis Rodman, saying, I don't want Dennis Rodman on my team. I don't want Lance on my team. The one different thing with those two players, Dennis Rodman was a force on defense, and he was a force in rebounding. I saw a stat recently where Dennis Rodman, I believe he led the league in rebounding from, I think, 1990 all the way, I think it was through 98, his last year in Chicago. Lance has never had that, never been an all-star. He came in 1 year out of Cincinnati, and he had a reputation that hasn't changed. He's inconsistent. I think it's more that New York mentality where he's from. He was good on the playground. He's a playground guy. I mean, he's one-on-one. He's that type of player in the NBA level. But Dennis Rodman is all the dresses, the hair, all that. Whatever you think about Dennis Rodman now, and you think about Dennis Rodman, we think of more recent than Detroit days. You think of Chicago and post-Chicago, where he's trying to pull down Karl Malone shorts and things like that. Just get under people's skin. Dennis Rodman, if Lance had that type of effect, I think even with his mindset being to be a pest, I think we would view him as a whole different level of a basketball player. If he was able to be more consistent with what he did on the court. One more thing, one last question before we get to our quick questions to end the show. Sticking with the Pacers, Reggie Miller, 90s, Paul George now. What was your favorite time to watch? The Reggie Miller days. Well, Paul George is gone, excuse me, or the Paul George days.
Reggie Miller, not just because Reggie Miller, but the competition.
Yeah.
I mean, we get to see Patrick Ewing tonight. Tomorrow night, we get to see Michael Jordan, Karl Malone. I mean, just think of, it wasn't just the Pacers who were good. It was the competition. It's not like there were no super teams.
Yeah.
Like you have today. I
Right.
mean, watching KD and Klay Thompson and Curry play everybody in the league, it's no fun.
No.
As a fan, it's no fun to see them beat somebody by 30 points by the end of the second quarter. That's no fun. But you had parity. As good as Michael Jordan and the Bulls were, the Pacers going to give them a battle.
Yeah.
And Reggie and Michael are going to go at it. And you go Philadelphia at I'm trying to think. Charles Barkley was in the league. Who were some other guys that were in the league during that time?
You didn't mention David Robinson.
Allen Iverson.
Allen Iverson was there.
Yeah, you got all of these. You got all of these teams that had good ball players, and so it's a lot different today. I don't enjoy the super. Even this year, we going to L.A. and you got Anthony Davis and Boogie
LeBron,
Cousins and all of that. From a fan, I'm pretty sure if you're an LA fan, you're excited. You've been in a drought a long time. Because I didn't enjoy watching Golden State from the standpoint of they had nobody to compete against them if everybody would have been healthy.
Yeah, I don't know if the NBA will go back to the way it used to be, where it was more spread out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more spread out now than what it was even a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got those teams. Me and Jeremy were talking about this earlier today. Teams in the East where they don't really have the power that they did back then. Because you could think you could have Allen Houston, Latrell Sprewell. They were not your quote unquote household names. If you were saying Seattle, you don't care about Allen Houston, Houston or Latrell Sprewell or Patrick Ewing, but you get nervous when they come to your court.
Right.
I'm not sure if you ever get those guys that those times like they were back then.
Yeah.
Got a few quick questions here to end the show. Some are sports related, some are not. What's your favorite vacation spot?
My favorite vacation.
And let me remind you, make these kind of quick. Don't elaborate. Just quick. Cancun. All right. Should have prepped you with that before. That's my fault.
That's good.
Favorite movie?
I like Love and Basketball.
Okay. Favorite NBA player?
Michael Jordan.
Okay. Favorite pregame meal?
Pregame meal?
Yeah, back in high school.
We didn't hot dog. I don't know. We didn't have pregame. That's the difference between now. We didn't have pregame meals. I don't even remember a pregame meal.
Something you've always wanted to do but you've never done.
Something I've always wanted to do, but I have never. I like to travel to Europe. I like to do that.
Okay. Peyton Manning or Tom Brady?
My heart says Peyton Manning, but my head says Tom Brady.
A different comparison right now: Kobe or LeBron?
Kobe.
Favorite Colt
of all time?
Mm-hmm.
Manning.
Piggyback off that. Favorite Pacer?
Reggie.
Best sports memory from your playing days, not coaching days, from your playing days.
From when I played?
Mm-hmm.
Just being on. We went to Huntington, Indiana, and this was in the 70s. And unfortunately, there was a lot of racial tension. The referees weren't calling the game right, and we won the game. And that was like winning a state championship when people are saying all sorts of racial things at you. They're throwing pennies at you. Referees aren't that fair, and we won. That was a good night, even though we got on the bus, and Coach says, don't even dress. Just don't take a shower. Just get your clothes on. Let's go. Let's get out of here. It's kind of rough in here.
And then last one, best memory as a sports dad.
You hit, well, for you, I'm just going to talk about you and not your brother. I don't forget who you were playing, but it was, I don't know if it's a punt return. I think it was a punt return. And this guy was coming down the sidelines, and you blocked him, and you lit him up.
Was that a home game?
Yeah.
I think it was Perry Meridian.
It was Perry Meridian.
I think so.
Oh, man, you lit that kid up. And, I'm not for any injuries. I thank God he didn't get hurt, but, boy, you knocked him. And the coaches were going crazy. We all were going crazy. I don't even know if you guys scored a touchdown on that or what happened as far as the runner with the ball. But that was a block that I still remember, and that was probably in 06, 07, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Well, Dad, thank you for joining
Sure.
the podcast. We're going to have to do this again sometime down the road. Next time, we'll trust us. It'll be a different set of questions. It won't be the same type thing over again. But with you being a pastor, I want to close this out. Let people know where they can visit your church. Well, today is your 22nd church anniversary.
Well, we're Word of Faith Christian Church here in Indianapolis on the far east side. We're at 6701 Oaklandon Road. Again, 6701 Oaklandon Road, Word of Faith Christian Church. We meet on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. We'd love to have you come visit.
Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. We'll have to do this again sometime soon.
All right.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I have been looking to that conversation with my dad ever since I asked him to be on the podcast. So just hearing him talk about some of the instances he had in high school and Eugene Parker. That story was kind of fun. I've heard of Eugene Parker, at least what happened with him on the court and how good he was. Didn't know that he was a 35 point per game guy. But when you're that dude, you're going to be putting up that many points. And remember, that was a time when there was no 3-point line. So that put up 35 points on the 3-point line. Nowadays, you think, oh, he's shooting 3 or 4 threes. Nah, them was all 2s and 1s, baby. Just 2-point baskets and the good old free throws. That's all that was. And it was a good conversation. I hope you enjoyed that. We will have more guests down the road. So be on the lookout for that. We will still have our regular podcast dropping on Monday, still Monday morning like usual. Not going to get away from that train at all. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Dr_J25. That is at Dr_JAY, the number 2 and the number 5. You can send all emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. That was jstevenspod@gmail.com. If you're not on Twitter, or if you are on Twitter and 280 characters is not enough for you, feel free to send an email. If you have you want to send a comment, you want to send some feedback, you have a question, whatever it may be, send an email. I will be utilizing listener comments, listener voice messages, listener questions in the podcast. Next week, like I said earlier, we will be having a listener question utilized as content on the podcast, something that was sent earlier this summer, that with the Little League World Series, I'll give you a little tidbit, with the Little League World Series coming up, that will be utilized in the next episode. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for new podcasts to listen to come across this one. And then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Jay Stevens Podcast, episode 14. Be on the lookout for Monday, another podcast coming. I'll see you next time.